Hey, what's up, guys? It's Prash. Wanted to come at you this evening to speak a few words of wisdom that I've gleaned on this special day. This special day is Ram Navami. For those of you who know about it, this is the appearance day. This is the anniversary of Lord Ram. Lord Ram is regarded as an incarnation of the divine. It's a very auspicious day for at least Hindus and Indians across the globe. And today is Ram Navami. It's the appearance day of Sri Ram. So on this special day, I wanted to share some wisdoms from one of the oldest and most revered and loved and treasured classics from India called the Ramayana. So the Ramayana is a huge volume of works charting the life of Lord Ram when he appeared on earth many, many millennia ago. And the Ramayana is obviously depicted across the globe. It's well known in many, many countries, and many cultures celebrate the Ramayana, and the effect it's had on culture, on society, on people still lasts millennia afterwards. And for thousands of years, it has captivated and inspired generation after generation of people, not only Indians, but people across the world, with its story of hope over darkness and good over evil. And of course, the festival of Diwali has sprung from this pastime of the Ramayana. So I want to share some wisdom from the life of Lord Ram, from the life of the characters, the people depicted in the Ramayana, which I feel are relevant right now at this difficult time, this lockdown period, this period that we're in, this austerity and uncertainty that we're living in right now. I feel that the Ramayana has some lessons that we can all embody and start to use it practically in our daily lives. And so let me run through a few of these lessons. If you're tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from right now, let me invite you to share this with people that you know, because this wisdom is something that can give us hope, direction, and structure in our lives, and it can actually help to inspire everybody who lives and comes into contact with us. So without further ado, let me share some wisdom from the Ramayana. For those of you who are just tuning in, the Ramayana is one of the oldest literatures from India, dating back thousands and thousands of years, charting activities that happened millennia ago before that. It's captured in the Ramayana. So let me introduce you to a few characters so you understand before I go into this. So Lord Ram is the personification of the divine. He is an incarnation of the divine. He is God in human form, you can say. Sita is his consort, the feminine aspect of divine. Lakshman played the role of his brother, and Hanuman played the role of his faithful, courageous right-hand man, his right-hand warrior, his servant, and his devoted servant and leader of all his armies. And Ravan was the bad guy in this. He was the baddie. The Diwali celebrations celebrate good over evil, and Ram coming home back to his kingdom after defeating the demon Ravan. So with that context, let me share some wisdom with everyone. The first lesson I want to share through the Ramayana is unity. Unity can overcome most difficulties in life. And the unity in the Ramayana is exemplified by the unity of the four brothers. Ram had three other brothers. There were four brothers in total. From different wives, the king had several queens. And those four brothers found a way to stay united, even though they weren't always together in the same place. They found great unity, and they would cooperate. They put aside their differences. They would put aside their egos. They all had their own personalities. They all had their own idiosyncrasies, and yet they would put them aside and always be united when it came to acting together as a united front. And so a big lesson for us all is to learn the importance of unity whilst putting aside differences during these difficult times. This then moves on to the need, secondly, to realize that relationships are more important than money. If that wasn't already obvious right now, if that wasn't already abundantly clear, a huge lesson for all of us is that relationships are more important than money. We're recognizing this, we're living this at the moment. The Ramayana exemplifies this, how the kingdom that was the rightful prize for Lord Ram, he was to own this kingdom, he was to ascend as the king. He was the eldest of his siblings, and the kingdom was supposed to go to him, but it didn't. And in doing so, it was his bonds with his family strengthened, his bonds with his brothers, with those who loved him, his townfolk, the citizens, they all strengthened their bonds. So it reminds us that relationships are more important than money. And we need to focus, especially at this time, in learning to embrace the relationships that we've got and seeing the good in people around us, despite us having our patience tested by being cooped up in a small space with the people who we're with. So that's the second lesson. The third lesson is sacrifice is necessary. Lord Ram had to be exiled. There was a condition that was placed upon him. His father had to reluctantly choose to make his younger brother, his Lord Ram's younger brother, that is his younger son, the heir to the throne. That was not what it was supposed to be, but he was bound by a promise he made. And therefore, Lord Ram was not to be the kingdom and was not to be the king. And the person, one of the king's wives, one of Dashrath's wives, had stipulated, and not only can he not be king, not only can he not have his rightful place as the king, as the heir to the throne, but also he must exile himself so that there is no risk that he will usurp the kingdom from the younger brother. And so Ram had to decide whether he would fight this request put upon him by his stepmother, or to honor the word of his father, honor the word of his family, and heed and abide by that principle, by that stipulation. And he chose to abide by the stipulation and voluntarily sacrifice the throne and sacrifice the comforts that he was afforded and he would have had in order to keep the word of his family and to keep that honor. So this speaks to sacrifice. They gave up sacrifice and had to live in such difficult circumstances, which leads me to my fourth point. Embracing austerity and discipline. We need to, as it's already clear to us, we're now forced to embrace some degree of austerity and discipline. So rather than being forced to embrace it, it's far better if we voluntarily embrace some discipline and some austerity. And this is what Ram did in his life. He voluntarily accepted that by sacrificing his right to the throne and exiling himself voluntarily to live in the forest for 14 years, he and his wife and his younger brother, Lakshman, who decided to go with him. He exhibited to the importance of embracing austerity. They had to live and eat very simple food that they could find, then forage in the forest. They lived very simply. Their accommodations were very simple. And they lived a life of simplicity, austerity, and discipline. And I think this is a powerful lesson for all of us to learn during this difficult time, to embrace austerity in our lives voluntarily and to learn to sacrifice rather than having it forced upon us. Now, how could this be done? We could practically learn to eat less, for example. Now, I'm not recommending that we starve, of course, but I'm saying that we may choose to give up certain foods that we enjoy because they're in short supply, or the risk of going out to get those foods isn't worth it. So we may choose to simplify our eating. We may choose to reduce the portions that we eat, because let's face it, a lot of us may not be getting the amount of physical activity that we deserve or need to justify eating the calories that we were previously eating. So for many of us who have no access to gym or may not be going out on long walks or not exercising enough, sometimes it's smarter to reduce the calories that we eat in order to compensate for the less amount of physical activity that we're doing. So we're moderating our weight. So this is a great example of embracing some austerity and some discipline in order to have and preserve better health. The same thing goes with activities during the day, if we're sharing the same space, we may need to endure having family members who are a lot closer to us and in our space. We can get very territorial, all of us can, but there's a need to avoid and resist the temptation to have a clash with our family members. How? Learning to accept that they too have a right to the space, learning to accept that maybe boundaries need to be put in place. Maybe they need to have the space that you're sharing for an hour or two, and then you take the space. Is that what you want? No, maybe not. But it's choosing to embrace austerity. It's choosing to sacrifice some comforts in order to preserve the sanity of the group of people under this one roof. Does that make sense? We need to look at the sanity of the group and the mental health of the group of people that we're living within our house. And that is more important than our personal preferences. So if we can learn to sacrifice a little bit and endure some austerity, tolerate a little, then it makes the sanity and mental health of everybody in the household stay high. And that allows us to have better physical health, better performance in our careers or our work, and we all benefit from that. Moving on to the fifth realization and lesson from the Ramayana. Don't follow the herd. In the Ramayana, the queen was responsible for having Lord Ram exiled to the forest. Her name was Kaikeyi, the third wife of the king. She chose to listen to poor information relayed to her by one of her maidservants. So the decisions and the actions that she made were based on distorted information that she was receiving, that she chose to listen to. And she failed to use her own intellect and her own judiciousness to evaluate the veracity, the truthfulness of what was being told. She didn't use her own intellect. She chose to not evaluate it. She chose not to challenge it. And by simply allowing herself to be exposed to unconfirmed hype and information out there, her mind became polluted, her choices became confused, and she started to make decisions that were harmful for everyone else. And that then led to the consequences of the exile of Ram and a lot of discord in the family, and ultimately the untimely death of her husband, the king, because he was brokenhearted by what he ended up having to be bound by, to send Ram off to the forest. So learning to not listen to the herd is a powerful lesson at this time, especially avoiding that. How can we avoid it? Well, we can first of all choose to be more choosy about the sources of information that we get. That doesn't mean that the media are right, by the way. That doesn't mean that the Guardian and the BBC and the press are the authorities either. It doesn't mean that. It could be that that person who's sending you that kooky stuff, that woo-woo stuff on Facebook or LinkedIn or WhatsApp, maybe they're right, maybe not. But what it does require is for us to use our own intellect, and I think use our two brains. We have a brain here, but we also have a gut brain, right? So it's about listening to our mind and listening to our heart, and using our intellect to make a decision as to what we choose to listen to and what we choose to switch off to. Maybe it means switching off to certain things. Maybe we need to leave a few WhatsApp groups, leave a few Facebook groups. Maybe we need to stop or mute certain groups and just avoid listening to them. Maybe we need to avoid listening to the news as constantly as some of us are doing. Maybe we need to switch our mind to something else. And in so doing, we become choosy with what we're hearing and how we respond to what we hear. So I hope that makes sense. For me, it does. I've chosen to do that. I've cut down the amount of sources that I choose to listen to, and I'm making up my own mind. I have my thoughts on what's coming, and it ain't pretty. I will tell you very frankly that I think that there's more sinister stuff going on. I'm sure some of you already feel it. Some of you think it, and maybe some of you are talking about it. But for sure, there's something deeper and darker at play. I do think that to a degree, the whole coronavirus thing is a little bit of a smokescreen, no matter how true or untrue the virus is and the situation is. But I do think it's a smokescreen for something else. But again, it's up to us to use our own our own judiciousness to do that. And so the lesson from the Ramayana is, don't listen to idle gossip, hype, and random information that's coming at you, but use your own intellect and your heart and your brain to make powerful decisions. That leads me to the sixth, and for now, the last lesson I want to share in this little broadcast, and that is around hope. One powerful lesson from the Ramayana is that hope triumphs. Having faith and having hope, these two need to become our allies during this time. Hope in humanity, hope in the goodness of people to come together, hope in our household, that our household will be able to keep it together, hope that they will have a future life. Those who've got children, those who've got young ones and dependents, it's the hope for them to have a better future. That hope needs to hold us strong. It needs to keep us. It needs to nourish us. It needs to keep us going. It needs to be our energy source to keep going. In the Ramayana, the hope that I want to depict is the time when Sita, the consort of Ram, she was kidnapped by Ravan, the protagonist of the whole story. And she was taken to Sri Lanka. In those days, it was known as Lanka. So she was taken to Lanka, which is now Sri Lanka, and she was held captive by Ravan. But she never lost hope. She always knew that Ram would come. Ram, her husband, would come to save her. And hope against hope, she just held that vision that I will get through this. I will see my beloved. He will find a way somehow. Now, sometimes we may feel that hope is foolish. It may be worthless having that hope. But here's the thing, folks. The hope helps to program and keep our conscious and our subconscious mind in a direction that is conducive to us. So you know what? Even if that hope is baseless, to have hope in itself, any kind of hope, helps to tune our mind and our subconscious mind to at least staying strong, surviving, and persevering through these difficult times. And so hope is such a powerful thing. And hope goes hand in hand with faith, whether that's faith based in a higher power, or whether it's faith based in humanity, or faith based in the universe. But there needs to be faith in some system or entity or group or individual that we will come out together. A great example of this actually is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, if you know about his book, he was in concentration camps during the war, and he was seeing family members, friends, and loved ones, and all decimated, all annihilated in those concentration camps in the most horrible kind of ways. And yet he held hope that his mental strength, his desire to be able to tell this story when he was released to countless people so that they can know the truth of what happened, and so that as a collective, humanity would never, ever, ever let this sort of thing happen again. That hope, that determination kept him going. Despite all the odds, that kept him going. You can check out his book, very powerful book by Viktor Frankl. But it was a realization that he had that kept him going. And this is what Sita had. She had a vision of Ram. She had a hope that he will come back. She knew that he would come back. And therefore, I put to you, sometimes we need to program expectations into ourselves that this will pass. We will get through this. Yes, we'll have tough times. Yes, we have to sacrifice. Yes, we have to make do with less. But in doing so, we will grow. We will strengthen. If we look back at our previous generations, some of those of you whose grandparents were living during the First or the Second World War, can you remember how tough those people were? They were tough cookies. Can you just think back at what our grandparents had to go without, what they had to endure, what they had to suffer and see, and yet they got through? You know, we forget how tough those generations were, because we haven't had that in this lifetime. Most of us haven't had any kind of wartime life experience. We haven't had that. And yet here we are in a war of sorts, whether it's with virus, whether it's with the 1% who want to dominate the world, whatever your view, We are at war right now. So for us to cultivate a mindset of shrewdness, of self-preservation, of self-sacrifice and determination, of wise decisions and choosing structure and discipline over fear and random thoughts and activities, it's the stuff that's going to make us tough. It's the stuff that's going to make us tough. I'm going to say it again. It's the stuff that's going to make us tough. And this is what we need to do to set the example for us, our children, our loved ones, the future generations. They all need to see that in us. Those generations, our grandparents are mostly not around. We need to be the example for those future for those future generations. We need to be the examples for our future. Tell me you feel this, click this and tell me. But this is what we need to do. So in conclusion, my invitation is, during this time, find a copy of the Ramayana or Google lessons from the Ramayana, wisdom from the Ramayana. Watch the old YouTube videos of the old Ramayana series from the 1980s, right? Those of you who remember Ramayana and Saga, he put the whole Ramayana story and thousands of verses into a beautiful TV series, which captivated people around the world. I mean, not just India, but the Eastern Europe. Everybody loved the Ramayana when it was around in the 80s. Go look it up, look at the English translation, and just start to embrace some of the lessons that the ancients had. Maybe for you, it's the Bible. Maybe it's the Quran. Maybe it's a literature from the past. Maybe it's the Greek mythologies. Find something. Because here's the thing. History repeats itself. We've been through wars before, and we're in a war now. History has a strange way of coming back. It's cyclical. It comes back and revisits us. So that means that those ancient books and texts have wisdom and lessons that were applicable then, but are equally applicable now. We've just got to dig in a little bit and find those lessons and pull those nuggets out and use them. And what better time to do it right now? We have time right now. Most of us have a little bit of extra time that we can use to occupy our brain. And in fact, those of us who say we have no time, maybe we need to cut out and extricate some of this time and bandwidth that we're investing into YouTube, WhatsApp, media, TV, and stuff like that. Cut it out a little bit and create some time for these ancient classics that may serve to nourish us, to sustain us, and to inspire us to do more. So, folks, those are my 6 lessons from the Ramayana. I hope that's benefited you. Leave your comments, love, like, share, and I hope you'll stay strong, stay well. Until another time, I look forward to speaking to you soon. And if you're going through a tough time, let me leave you with this. If you want to chat, if you want to have a discussion about how you can empower yourself or your family, how you can navigate uncertainty, how you can overcome the disruptive life that you're living and introduce structure, calm, discipline, and good health, then drop me a line. I'd love to have a chat with you, and we will see how we can work together and bring that into your life. Drop me a line and we'll speak. That's it from me. Namaste. Peace out. Jai Shri Ram.